Okay, thanks, Brian. So, hello and welcome to our first panel presentation for Diverse Abilities Dialogues for 2025. I feel like it was a blur, 2024, and now we're here. I am Jenny Paxson. I'm from the Webster Public Library. I am our adult services librarian here for fiction and for technology help, but I also do all of our programming for people with developmental disabilities, caregivers, and it's been a passion for me since I have 2 children with developmental disabilities, and I'm always looking for resources for them. So I've been very lucky to partner with the Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County and Challenger Miracle Field. I read it off your shirt, yes I did. Because they're just amazing. They become friends of mine as well as like great resources for me. And so I would like to share our partners with us. Beth, if you want to come up and talk about Challenger or maybe some upcoming events.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the prompt for upcoming events. I probably would have forgotten.
And if you haven't already, there's a new flyer for 2025, and our next presentation is February 4th. It's going to be care coordination. Sorry.
No, you're fine. So hi, my name is Beth Cunico. I am the director for Challenger Miracle Field. I started out as I'm a special needs parent, and we moved here when my daughter was 2, so she had just been diagnosed. I knew not a single person here other than my husband's coworkers. So I have been that parent who was lost and looking for resources and starting out with a fresh diagnosis and trying to figure things out. And I feel like we live in such an amazing community with all of these resources, and now in my job as director with Challenger, I just love seeing us all come together and find those parents. I'm always amazed at the number of people who are like, oh, I didn't know that existed, or oh, I didn't know I could ask for this, or I didn't know my kiddo could participate in this way, right? And it just brings them so much enrichment that they get to try something new or find a therapy that just really connects with them. And so I love seeing us come together and share all that with each other, because that's how I went from being a lost parent to now where I'm at. And so at Challenger, for anyone that may not know, we do year-round programming, primarily sports, adaptive, all ages, all abilities. Right now we just started bowling, which is a really fun social thing for the families and for the players. Coming up in February, we have registration open currently for our Valentine's dance. We do the younger ones and then the older ones together. And families and a dinner at Webster Golf Club, they're very supportive of us every year. And it's a great time, and it's, I say it's about sports, but really it's about all of those parents coming together and sitting at the tables at bowling, for example, and talking through like, hey, my kiddo's struggling with this, and oh yeah, well mine was different, but this is who we went to, and all of that information, that's like the good stuff. That's the magic of Challenger, which I really love. So who am I passing off to? All right, I'm going to pass off to Kim now.
She has a raspy voice. The winter raspy voice. Hi, I'm Kim Dewar. I'm the Vice President of Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County. We are a parent-run advocacy group who started just with 3 moms, and we're still 3 moms. And we're not just 3 moms. We are pretty awesome moms, with the goal of helping out kids who are navigating the early intervention system and preschool special ed system, the 0 to 5 age group. And as our children grew out of the program, we're now just helping all special needs parents in general. But we do local and state level advocacy for early intervention programming. And while we will never stop advocating at the local and state level for funding, we decided that we needed to just help the parents here and now. So we offer free purposeful programming every single month for kids in the 0 to 5 and up age groups. We have a webinar each off month, and then the following month, I'm not saying this right, we have webinars that are informational on a month, and then the following month is an in-person play date. And with the in-person play dates, we have therapists and educators come from Step by Step and volunteer their time to answer questions with families. And we also partner with Parenting Village for both the in-person play dates and the webinar. We call these programs Parent Connection. You can find them on our Facebook group or our website. And our next one is on January 15th, coming up in a couple of weeks. And Bridget Hurley from the Children's Agenda will be updating us on all the local and state advocacy news. And it is perfect timing because it's a lot of crazy things going on with the local and state government with early intervention and preschool. So it will be a good chance to get updated on what's going on from Bridget. Our next month play date would be on the second Saturday from 10 to 12. But check out our website and Facebook group for that. Thank you so much for being here. We love the fact that we just keep growing in our collaborations and our public awareness of our resources. It's really helpful to our families. So thank you for being here.
So I'm going to have each of you tell us what you do for your organization, what your organization does, and how you kind of got started, and obviously, who you are.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alicia.
Okay. My name's Alicia Rowland. I am an occupational therapist. I graduated from Keuka College. I started off in the pediatric school-based area. I worked at Mary Carriola Children's Center, and then I worked through Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES at Mid-Lakes Education Center. A total of about 10 years. And from there, a new kind of opportunity opened up, which is called vision therapy. And we learned a tiny bit about vision therapy in school. But now I'm currently working under Dr. Paul Harvey at Averly Eye Care, which is in Canandaigua. And I work with mostly children, but also some young adults and older adults to develop their visual skills. So do you want more than that now, or is that good?
I think that's probably okay. I'm sure we'll have more questions,
Yes.
obviously.
I'd love to explain it more, but let's hear from the other people.
My name's Haley Everett, and I work at Studio 19 Dance Company. How I started there was I was a student, and I kind of, we have a special needs program there that started out with 2 girls who've been dancing there since they were 3 years old. And when I was a junior and senior in high school, I assisted their classes to then eventually have the class handed over to me. And they are now 27 and 24, so they've been dancing there forever. And I was like, these girls need a class. So I did some, I also worked at Holy Childhood, so I just kind of went out in my community and seen like where the dance need was, and we're up to 13 kiddos in our teen and adult and about 7 kiddos in our younger program. And although they have a performance at the end of the year, it's more about those social skills and those motor skills and just kind of dancing. Like everybody loves dancing, everybody can dance, and so just kind of having them have that opportunity. And my older class actually competed last year for the first time because I feel like the competition world needs to be more inclusive as well. So it actually had the competition, covered all their fees, and is actually adding a category for them specifically in their competition because of them, which was super cool. And they are going back this year, and they got first in their category, and they were so excited. And it's not for them to get awards, it's for them to just have stage experience and kind of just for the other students as well. I do an inclusion dance with our senior company, and to see them form the relationships as well, to know that they're just part of something so much bigger than their little dance class. And yeah, it's a little bit about me.
I'm Julie Senzi. I'm one of the co-owners and co-founders of MindFit Mental Health. I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a licensed and board-certified behavior analyst. I started off as a direct care staff at Hillside Children's Center after I graduated undergrad. Moved around that company to a number of different positions, moved around the state a couple of times, so I've kind of been with the developmental disabilities the majority of my career. But also worked with adults out in Albany and children on the spectrum and kids in foster care as well. When I came back to Rochester, I decided to start private practice, and my partner, Dr. Rob Rice, and I formed MindFit Mental Health, and we serve, our specialty is working with kids on the spectrum, kids with ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD. Those are kind of the main areas of focus, but we see other patients as well. So we provide individual and group therapy. We have groups that work on social skills, coping skills. We've done groups with animal-assisted therapy in the past and like self-esteem, all sorts of things like that. We also have what we call our gamer club. So we use a lot of technology. It's probably something I should have mentioned at the start. We use a lot of technology in our practice. So we incorporate video games and virtual reality and biofeedback and neurofeedback into our treatment. We found that a lot of the kids were getting kind of lost in the mental health world and they just don't do well with sitting and talking back and forth. So we incorporated video games and that sort of thing to not only gain their interest and make them want to come to see us, but also there's so many things that you can do with technology. And it makes it fun for them and for us. So we also have a program that we call our Gamer Club, where kids can pay like a membership fee and come in and use our gaming equipment with the support of a clinical staff. So they're working kind of informally on social skills. It helps them develop relationships. We've had a lot of kids build friendships and carry those friendships outside of the agency from that program. So we run that twice a week for an hour each night, and you can come as much or as little as you want. We also have had in the past a similar program for adults as well. And you don't have to be on the spectrum to participate. It can be anybody who's just looking for a social outlet. So yeah, I think that's it.
Hi, I'm Shannon Halligan. I am at Halligan Creative Arts Therapy, and my background is I actually went to NAS and I started out working at CDS, Continuing Developmental Services, as an intern, and then was employed there for about 10 years. So I really learned to work with folks who have special needs. I was based mostly out of the also medically frail program there. From that, I kind of started doing consulting in Rochester and working with different places and offering like weekly or bi-weekly groups for folks depending on their goals and their needs. And from that, I ended up forming a private practice, and I always say it was like one by one because art therapy has always been one of those things that's adjunctive to most programming. So we've always kind of been this, people have always thought of us as like this alternative piece, but we're actually state licensed. Now we're accepted by at least 4 insurance companies, and it's growing. It's always been the biggest barrier in my career of being in the field for 20 years. Not until about 2018 when I was working at a mental health clinic. So I was working at what is now Liberty Resources. It's used to be Monroe Youth and Family, and I was working primarily with kids, and we saw kids like 5 and up, and my caseload was 5 to about 12. I had a couple of teens, but when people were coming in as families for mental health care, there were often younger children who needed different interventions. Like you said, sitting and just traditionally discussing mental health and working on those diagnoses wasn't really that helpful. So coming in with this creative arts background and incorporating that kind of in treatment for kids, families, groups that we did there, and I continued to build my private practice kind of on the side. I formed it as a solo practice for the first 5 years or so. And then post-COVID, I recognized, wow, I can't see any more folks. I need to start hiring and expand to a group. So we expanded to a group at the end of 2020. And now we're up to 9 therapists and 2 admins. So there's 7 of us in Rochester, and there's 1 in Ithaca, 1 in Long Island. They provide therapy there. Our Long Island person is mostly telehealth. But we've really expanded in response to that. So we do mental health, we accept insurances. We also, for years, have always had folks come with self-direction. So for people that want to do groups or they want to do individual work and they want to work on, creative arts projects, they might want to work on sewing and fiber arts. We have kind of a wide variety of a studio environment. It's not this traditional kind of mental health offices. It's really art studios where we happen to also cultivate all of these creative arts projects. So we have clients making, big canvas art. We have, people doing sculpture and clay and things like that. So it's really kind of that environment, and I think that's more welcoming to kids, teens, people on the spectrum, things like that. Something we also do, we do individual therapy, but we offer specialized groups. Like this spring, we're going to have School of the Holy Childhood come with their adult program and do a series. So it's a 6-week series during the day of creative arts making, because that's an interest that folks are identifying they would like, but they're also working on social skills. They're also working on team building. They're working on managing anxiety, coping with stressors. Just being out in the community and learning, how to interact with folks. So we have those. We have some social skills groups for different age groups. So we have a tween group, which is about, I think the youngest in that is like 9. So it's like 9 to 12 or so. And then we have a teen group, which is older, teens up to about 18 or 19. So we offer kind of a hybrid of different things. We participate in some parent coaching and training and support. That's not insurance-based, but that is something we do provide in addition to just the one-on-one work with the kid, because we all know it's related, and helping to balance the bigger picture, which is really kind of the model of wellness that we really value, is looking at just the bigger picture, not just managing your symptoms for mental health. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell, and I can talk more about, that as we go along.
So Shannon, you talked about self-direction and insurance. I was just curious about, also everyone else, how that is covered, your programs. Are you also covered by self-direction, insurance, or are you able to help families out? How does that work?
I can answer for us and kind of the way we do it. We do it a couple ways. And as you know, if you utilize your mental health coverage with insurance, you have to be treating a mental health diagnoses, which is where it can get a little bit complex. One thing we've noticed is if we're looking at something like somebody was talking about a new diagnosis, that's an adjustment period with your mental health. So adjustment disorder, something like that, can be treated utilizing your insurance to pay for it, because financial stuff is always the barrier. Most people cannot just fully private pay for things, or it's very limited what they can do. We also do self-direction, which has to be all-inclusive, right? So it has to be for the whole community. Anyone can take it, and it can't be called therapy. So we do adapted art. It's really the same kind of idea. You're working with someone on their identified goals, but it's a little bit of a different model when it comes to reimbursement for self-direction. We also utilize a pretty low, a sliding scale and a low scale on payment for group therapy. So that's another way. Let's say folks don't have self-direction, or they're in the process, or their insurance isn't covered, and they don't really fit the criteria for anxiety. Most folks do meet criteria for anxiety or adjustment in some form, all of us, including myself. So we can kind of look at that and really utilize people's benefits, because people need to use insurance to pay for services most of the time. So we kind of look at all the options. We can also connect folks to a broker, for self-direction if they're new to this process. We have some really savvy parents and families that know way more than I do, that I often will kind of make that connection of resources. So trying to kind of look at everybody's situation and see how we can look for covering it, because most people can't just do private pay for a long period of time.
What are the 4 insurances that you're?
A big win, which I love sharing, is Excelis Rochester finally. As of September, art therapists are paneled directly in network with our license. We spent a year and a half we had to have supervision under licensed social work to go through this process. I did some advocacy and lobbying with the insurance company directly. We had 2 meetings, and they passed on their recommendation, which was to panel us through credentialing committee and eventually to the behavioral health medical directors. It was a long saga, but they finally allowed us to be in network without the supervision oversight as art therapists. It's really exciting. So that was a huge barrier that we kind of, worked with this year. We also are accepted by MVP, Cigna or Evernorth. They just had a name change, and a couple of EAP companies. So CureLink is one, and then we're in the process of a second one right now. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but there's several. So it's almost an individualized thing. There's a couple insurance companies that yet don't accept art therapy, so there's work to be done on our end in terms of lobbying. There's a couple Senate bills that aren't passed through yet, things that are still in the works. So that's something that, in my career I've seen shift, and I think it's going to continue to be kind of going in that direction, but that's sort of something we really strive to advocate for, because it's such a need.
So at MindFit, in addition to myself and Rob, we have, I think about 10-ish collaborators. So they're technically in their own private practice, but they share space with us, and we, share referrals and things like that. So some of us take insurance, like I accept Excelis and MVP. We have another clinician who, in addition to those, accepts Cigna. We have done like single case agreements with other insurances before, and we can provide super bills for out-of-network reimbursement. Some of our collaborators are private pay only. And then we also have an ongoing source of interns, I guess you could say, from St. John Fisher, University of Rochester, and some of the other local colleges. So they can provide mental health counseling at a reduced rate, so much, like basically the amount of a copay. We have had self-directed be used for some of our groups, so people have received reimbursement or they've paid us directly for that. And then, for those that have insurance that doesn't, that none of us are paneled in, you can do private pay.
At 19, we do accept self-direction. It depends on the agency of like everything it covers. So most of the agency covers tuition. Our tuition is yearly, split into 10-month payments. Something that we find tricky that they don't all cover is like costume and recital fees, just because they'll say it's optional. But some of our agencies do. It just kind of depends on who our students are with. But we also, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, we advertise both of our classes as all needs classes, so we're able to get past that like inclusive stage with agencies. We had to go back and forth on the names to get that, but we finally found a happy medium.
Averly Eye Care, so there's really two parts. I'll describe a little bit of the process. So someone who's interested in getting their vision evaluated would first set up a pediatric evaluation with Dr. Harvey. Side note on that, he's an optometrist, but he's a behavioral or developmental optometrist, which is extra special. Not all optometrists look for the same thing. So a lot of people think of vision just as acuity, which is like, how do you see when you look at an eye chart? Can you read the letters? But vision is much, much more than that. How do your eyes move? How do they work together? When you have to look at something close and then have to look at something far away, is there problems with that? Is there problems when you're reading? So he really goes into more depth functionally, looking more holistically at vision and the function of vision when he does an evaluation. So most Averly Eye Care does participate with a lot of insurances. I don't have the list. There's a whole list. And the evaluation portion with the doctor is typically covered. And he's the one who would provide the diagnosis. So he would go through all of his steps, things that he checks for, and he would give the diagnosis. And that portion generally is covered by insurance. Depending on what he finds, he may request more testing from me, or he may recommend a vision therapy program. And that's where it gets a little more crazy. We can submit to insurance. A lot of insurances don't cover vision therapy yet. There is one that does, so I'm hopeful that that's like meaning that it's going to move in the right direction. And we also offer private pay packages. So the one is Blue Choice Option, and I do see a lot with Blue Choice Option. So if you get a chance to pick, and you're thinking about vision therapy, go for that one.
Yeah, my son actually did vision therapy with Alicia, and it was a road to get to a diagnosis kind of for my son, because other eye doctors don't test for the things that Dr. Harvey does. Correct. And so he went to 3 other eye doctors, and they said there was no issue. Mm-hmm. And until he went to Dr. Harvey, and I actually saw what Dr. Harvey was looking at, and I was like, oh yeah, look at that. That is what his eyes are doing. Yeah. And it just took a long time to get there. Yeah. And so it was good that we did the program, I think. But I know a lot of insurance companies see it as quote unquote experimental. Yeah. And that's annoying because there's a lot of things I think people label as experimental that kids
And
need
they're
help
very
with.
helpful, yeah.
Yes, yes. Like my daughter with Gestalt language processing, it's like, that's experimental. And I'm like, I don't think that's really, you just put a label on it so that people can't get those things, which is unfortunate. But anyway, that was my, what is it called, soapbox. But, so what kind of things, though, do you do in vision therapy? Like, that's, I don't know if people understand what that is.
So-
Sorry.
I know. It's the same. If you're familiar with occupational therapy, it overlaps a lot, but because I work under an optometrist, I get to use special tools that I wouldn't as just an occupational therapist. So I get to use lenses therapeutically. I have prescription lenses just for visual acuity, but I use lenses in a therapeutic sense to help the brain and the eyes develop better neural pathways so that they can work better together. So lenses, patches we often use, especially at the start or depending on the diagnosis, to make sure each eye separately is developing the skills that each needs to be able to be a better part of the team as two eyes working together. Lenses, patches, prisms is another kind of lens. It's a very powerful tool that helps make the eyes turn a certain way so we can practice different eye movements by looking through prisms. And then filters is also very cool. So if you're familiar with 3D glasses, where you might like watch a 3D movie and have special glasses on, it's that same kind of technology where we can practice using both of the eyes together to see like a 3D image, or we might be looking at something with two colors. Like if we have red-blue glasses on, you might have to see something that's red and blue. So it's helping to train the brain and the eyes. So the brain's recognizing that both eyes need to be participating. So those are really cool tools. And then technology stuff too. We have a lot of cool things that, other therapy places wouldn't, because we're really focused on the visual system. So we get to do some, touch screen stuff. It's getting the eyes and the hands to work together and stuff. But there's so much. It looks like therapy. Vision affects your whole body. It affects your balance. It affects your coordination. So a lot of stuff I do is using the whole body. And then we really focus in on visual skills and developing those tiny little eye movements, fine motor, but with the eyes, so that the child can do things like reading and writing is really the main areas where we see impact. And then other symptoms like headaches, sometimes double vision, things like that.
So one of my favorite things to ask is, what is one of maybe your favorite success stories with one of your clients, or just overall in general that you've seen over the years? I think that gives everybody kind of a good idea of what you do, maybe a roadblock that you see often, with your kiddos or your clients and stuff. So if you guys have a success story that's a favorite, we would love to hear that.
I have one. I have a young man who I worked with beginning when he was in high school, and he struggled a lot socially, significant anxiety and OCD symptoms, really struggled to kind of function in everyday life. And I worked with him in therapy. We used a lot of the technology, taught him coping strategies, worked with his parents on things that they could do at home that would be helpful. And once he graduated high school, he ended up moving and doing a college program out of town, quite a distance away. And he was successfully able to complete the program. He lives independently in an apartment all by himself. He works a job. He commutes every day on his own. He has just come so far, and he's developed friendships out there, and it was just really cool to see. And when he graduated high school, the mom reached out to me and asked me to write like a little letter to him about, our relationship and working together and things like that on this poster that she was putting together from everybody that's kind of been involved in his life throughout the years. So I thought that was really sweet that they included me in that. And I still work with him today, virtually now. Yeah.
I have one student who I actually first met. I used to work at Sage Rochester a couple summers ago, and when I first met her, just very shy. She's also homeschooled, like doesn't really participate. I also work at Gigi's Playhouse now and participated in one-to-one programs, but never group programming there. And then when I started working at Gigi's, I would see her come in for speech, and I got talking to her mom. I was like, just come, you should come try, because she like what her mom's like, she's dancing at home all the time, but she just like gets nervous in a group setting. And I was like, come try this summer, see how it goes. And she loved it, ended up signing up for the year. She actually, because of dance, has her own friend group now that she had her first friend birthday party ever for her 14th birthday. She is doing a solo this year that she's going to take to competition, and she's so excited about it. And because of dance and because of her coming out of her shell in that way and making new friends, it has led her to come to Gigi's group programs. So she's joining our teen programs now, which kind of overlap with her dance friends too. So being able to make those connections with the same age group. Her mom, she actually helped me assist with dance kids at Gigi's, which she was like so excited about and so tickled that she got to like be doing that. And she actually just worked on a project with our speech therapist, Kristen, about dance. She wanted to do just what she loved about it, so she came up with all the key points, and I was like, Mary Beth, you should come present this at dance. I think you should do it. So we got our whole senior company and all of her friends in one room. I think there was over 30 kiddos in there, and she stood up there so confident, and it's just things like key points she was talking about. Is like, I made friends, I think I'm going to ask them to be my best friend. She goes, I like dancing because it makes me feel confident. I've never felt like, it was just, everyone was in tears. So she definitely is, I go to her as my success story.
I can talk about a client that I've worked with for almost 10 years now, I think. And he came to working with me when they had tried a bunch of different things that weren't really working. He was in the process of moving into a supported apartment setting, and the goal was for him to be in his own apartment. And also part of a complex. There's like 4 other apartments adjacent. So he was struggling a lot with social interactions of the other folks that lived in what they call the main house program. So socially, he would kind of only wanted to speak about his preferred topics of interest. He didn't want to really have this kind of back and forth conversation. He would form a friendship with a housemate, and there would be a lot of frustration and anger, and he didn't know how to express his emotions, really. And art making was something that he had first turned down because he's like, no, it's messy, I can't do that, I don't want to touch paint, I don't want to do any of that. And you know, he came and visited me, and we just had a conversation, and I kind of showed him around my studio at the time, and he's since followed me to a new location now. But he was willing to start working with me on like building like models of, you know, he would get a kit, and it would be like building a model of a car or like a ship, and you know, whatever interest. But we would work on the skill building part, but also conversation and back and forth and kind of role playing. Hey, when this happens with, you know, your housemate, how can we communicate with them that you're frustrated, but without exploding and being angry, and you guys end up in a fight, and there's a lot of you know chaos in the home and things like that. So we worked a lot on that kind of social building. And it took him some time, but he started to kind of implement some of those strategies of using his I statements. He was talking to a peer. Even with his staff, they had noticed an increase in his willingness to kind of negotiate activities. He would refuse activities that weren't in his wheelhouse, and then he started to go on more outings that were, you know, something different that maybe he hadn't tried before. And he would always work on things, and now even to this day, he'll say, I'm working on being flexible. I'm rolling with it. It's going to be okay. I know it's going to be okay. His schedule changed. I'm disappointed, but it's going to be okay. This is what we're going to do instead. So really seeing that, I also noticed an increase in his interest kind of in asking me. First, he'll start out with, how was your weekend? How's your dog? I have a little chihuahua. She's so spoiled. How's she doing? What did you do? How's your daughter? You know, just this kind of engagement that's more authentic than just kind of the same standard questions and the same, like, let me talk to you about snowplows. And that person is not engaging, and it's not a conversation. So a lot of that, but also just seeing him regulate his emotions differently, and knowing that he could be frustrated and angry, but it didn't have to get explosive. He didn't know what to do with all that energy. So he still lives independently without the skill building that he had before. He has support in the home, but he didn't need the one-to-one skill builder. He volunteers in the community, has 2 placements that he goes to every week. He independently takes Lyft line to come to his appointments to see me. He's formed some friendships. He has family friends. He's very social. He does a lot of recreation stuff. People are inviting him to things now, whereas before it was more of this sort of, oh, well, we have to include everybody, so let's, but now it's more like, oh, we really want you to come do this thing with us. So just seeing his personality have room to develop and not feeling like he can never have those, what people think of as more negative emotions, where they're just a response to something. So kind of working on the emotional social piece, and just seeing him still continue to be active and you know, maturing really. He's in his mid-30s now, so I started when he was like mid-20s. And just seeing that develop with him. He's really integrated those skills, which is always the goal in therapy, into the world and applying it to real stuff. He runs into problems or barriers, there's a way to work it through. So that's really cool to see for him.
Awesome. So our setup is shorter term. I typically see clients for maybe 6 months. And so there's just a lot of little things that I can tell you. One of the clients that I worked with was able to ride their bike for the first time, which was really awesome. They came in and they were so proud to tell me that. In gym class, one other student was able to hit the ball when they were playing baseball. Yeah, for the first time. And I was like, yeah, awesome. One student was really excited to tell me that they tracked their like reading level by letters, and they were able to increase 3 letters higher, so that they were able to read at a higher level, and she was really excited about that. Yeah, those are the main ones that stick out for me, but there's lots of little things that start happening within those 6 months that I anticipate, you know, continue on after they're finished with the program.
I think that's something that people who have children with disabilities, you have to cherish those little things a little more. And whereas like people who have typical kids, they like may not see that thing as treasured as much as a parent who has a child with a disability. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. Thank you all for sharing those. I want to go back to Julie about technology type things. Like what type of technology do you use at MindFit? Like what type of gaming type things? Like,
So we use all different gaming systems. We have like PlayStation and Nintendo Switch and Xbox, some of the old school Nintendo systems and Wii's, things like that. We also, well, currently it's broken, but we do have virtual reality that we've used in the past and plan to use again in the future. We also have a neurofeedback device, which looks almost like a headband, and it goes across the forehead and measures brainwave activity. So we teach kids meditation and have them practice meditation. And this particular neurofeedback is evidence-based to help significantly improve symptoms of ADHD. So there's an app where they sit with the little headband on and they listen to the whatever sound that they choose, beach or rain or whatever. And they have to actively work to kind of like quiet their mind. So when their brain waves are kind of calm, they hear birds. That's like the signal that their brain waves are calm. So they hear birds, and they have to see how many birds they can get. The question that I always get from kids is this going to tell you what I'm thinking? I'm like, no, I cannot read your mind. That would be lovely if I could, but no. And then the the biofeedback is a little sensor. It goes on the ear. It measures heart rate variability, which is the time in between each heartbeat. And we teach kids breathing techniques, and they can visually see how the breathing is calming them. There's a green, blue, and red zone. They want to be in the green zone as much as possible. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the zones of regulation, but we use that curriculum. So there's just the colors are a little bit of an overlap, which is helpful when I'm teaching somebody that curriculum as well. And so they have to work to keep themselves in the green zone as much as possible, and we will often pair that with playing video games, because video games can elicit all sorts of reactions, you know, from excitement to frustration to overstimulation, all that sort of thing. and they have to keep themselves in the green zone in order to keep playing. So it's almost like a built-in reward at the same time. We use collaborative games, like cooperative games, where you have to communicate with each other in order to get through the level or figure out the puzzle or whatever. So that helps with teamwork and cooperation and communication skills, the frustration tolerance. We use some games to build characters so we can learn more about how a child sees themselves, how they want to be viewed, things like that. My partner, Dr. Rice, actually wrote a book about how video games are used in psychotherapy. I have a copy with me if anybody wants to take a look at it before I go. But there's just so much we can do with it, and kids enjoy it. So it's not all that we do. It's not like we're sitting and playing video games every single time somebody comes in. But it's a very large piece of what we do, and we've seen a lot of success with kids learning all sorts of skills through something that they already do at home and enjoy. So, and then the other piece is that we can then teach the parents how to use video games at home. So if I have a child who absolutely cannot get along with their sibling, and we're working on that relationship, I can teach the parents how to support them to play a collaborative game at home to help build that connection with the sibling relationship. Even children some of our kids will purchase the biofeedback sensor. It's only like $125, and the app itself is free. So sometimes kids will purchase it and then they can practice at home. But even if they don't have it, we can still use the wording that we use in sessions, like get yourself to green, remember to focus on your breathing. And we'll teach parents, about biofeedback and how that can be helpful at home as well.
So Haley, my daughter, Erica. She's very challenging when it comes to, getting them to do an activity. How do you do that in dance with kids who, how do you build that relationship? And this, I guess, is a question for everybody, but I wanted to start with Haley because I want my daughter to learn how to dance, but.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because dance is movement the whole time, but I have movement breaks with stuff I want them to do. So we usually start with some kind of circle time that's structured to just kind of stretch, but in a fun game way. So it never seems like work almost, but getting their bodies warm and ready, and then do a song, but with some kind of props, so some kind of sensory input with that, with it being scarves or egg shakers. And a lot of it is, not gonna lie, trial and error. If this isn't working, we're moving on. If one kid is not liking it, we're moving on. But I notice with a lot of the activities I do, it's almost giving them that sensory input that they're coming and seeking. So if that's rolling on the mat or having an egg shaker or being able to just twiddle with a scarf the whole time, but they're still engaged within the program. Even I found my poly spot stars are floppy, and one kid's just cannot focus unless he is holding a star in his hand. I also actually have one of my other students' parents. She actually works at Holy Childhood. She has no dance experience whatsoever, but she's just a magical human, and they all just listen to her. I don't know what it is. So I will definitely say that she's a big portion of it too. I would not survive my classes with just out her face. I say, I'm when you're not there, I'm gonna put on a mask and pretend I'm you. But just kind of finding, feed off the class, feed off the energy. I know our class right after break was we definitely weren't getting any choreography done. We were definitely doing more mat time and doing more stretching and catering to them. I like to say for those classes, I give them suggested choreo. So yes, the main goal is to get on stage and dance, but that's also not the main goal. Half of them hate it. So I'm hoping to offer a class that's not a performance class, but just that movement. So if we're not choreographing anything that day, it's fine by me, because I said, I give them suggested choreo to go on stage and do whatever they would like to do. So it's definitely more of those motor skills and friendship skills and involving them even with those social skills, like, hey, you pick the next friend, hey, you pick the next song, hey, you come up with a dance move to do in our dance, and kind of including with everyone. And I find that they feed off each other as well. Like one girl will take the girl's hand and be like, come on, let's go. Or if like she's not there, she'll like will like kind of take that like assistant teacher role. I call her my assistant. So just kind of finding their happy place and kind of including it in all of the activities that we do.
So how do you build that relationship? This can be like an everyone question. Like, how do you build that relationship with like initial student coming in, and like what does that look like? And I know on your end you said those relationships are short, Alicia, but like how do you get that in such a short time too? So everybody can answer this question, but I guess start with Alicia.
I let them be themselves. There's not really an answer because everybody's different, but I try to figure out what they like and what they're interested in. Same kind of thing, try to like hide some work in fun things because that just makes, it fun for everybody. But there are times that I have to ask them to do hard things because that's why they're in therapy. So building that relationship first and kind of letting them sometimes direct the therapies, like child-directed therapy, helps. I think them build trust with me, so that when I do have to ask them to do something a little bit hard, that they're more willing to do it. And really, I mean, all the kids I've worked with really do have a lot of improvement in a short amount of time, which is really amazing. So it is both. It's them putting in the hard work too, but also them trusting me to kind of guide the session. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of harder to do like those individual relationships with having such a large group setting, but I feel like with my younger ones especially, like I said, it's even though there's multiple of them, there's very like student led. Like I'm not going to push them to do something they're uncomfortable with. If they're standing in the corner for the first couple weeks and twiddling with their scarves, then that's totally fine. I had one girl that took 2 months before she even joined us to do anything, but she was engaged and she was answering questions and I was still including her. Even if she was over in the corner, she was still wiggling and moving. So just kind of the class is very much for them. So kind of wanting it to be their safe spot and their creative outlet. So allowing them to kind of have that flexibility with that as well.
We basically just kind of meet the kids where they're at. So we have some kids who come in and they are super excited and so happy to be there and talk our ear off, and it's, piece of cake right from the get-go. And then we have other kids who are much more resistant. Either they don't want to be there, or they've had bad experiences with other therapists in the past, or whatever the reason might be. So we're very strength-based, we're very future-focused. So we want to learn what are the things that you're interested in, what are the things that you feel you excel at already, and how can we build off of that stuff. So as far as the interest goes, we incorporate that a lot into like our treatment planning and our conversations. So for example, we'll use some narrative therapy. So if we have a child who is like their thing is Sonic, we'll talk about, okay, what are some things that Sonic might struggle with, and how can we, what are some of missing the word, what are the tools or whatever that he uses to kind of fight those things away and stuff like that. So we kind of help externalize what's going on with them outside of themselves. So they don't view themselves as like the problem. They're not the problem. The problem is the problem. So we'll turn that into a video game character. We'll, and like when creating a treatment plan, we might, rather than just your normal treatment plan, we might talk about different levels, like what would this level of a video game look like, and how do you beat this level, and what are the things that you use to beat this level. I'll give them choices. So do you want to do this game or this game? Sometimes for kids who are pretty resistant to doing anything that's difficult or they consider work, we'll use the video games as a reinforcement. So, if we can get through this, then we can play some video games, and we just kind of meet them where they're at. So we've had, similar to what you said, I've had a couple of clients who didn't speak to me for 6 months. And, I would have the conversation with the parents, like, I just want to make sure that, they have a say in who they're seeing. They have to feel comfortable, and if I'm not the right person, that's okay. But they would keep coming back, and sometimes we would sit in silence for an hour. Sometimes we would pull up a music app and listen to the music that they like. Sometimes we would just sit and quietly draw. And eventually these kids begin to open up, whether it's they start by writing to me or, that something comes out while we're playing a game or something like that. So slowly, just by not forcing them, not pushing them so hard, we're able to get them to open up. So the fact that we're private practice and not bound by the revolving door type of thing like a clinic would be, where we have, only 10 sessions to get through this. We have much, I have patients that I've seen since I began 10 years ago in private practice. So we're able to kind of take that extra time to begin to get to know each other and things like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of build on that and, agree that, the art making that we do as art therapists is a nice way to externalize a problem or a challenge and put it on a character versus you. You can come in, we use Inside Out a lot. It's great movies for that illustrated purpose, and us art therapists are like, we've been doing that for years. But kind of looking at those characters and those emotions, embodying a being and being able to kind of learn how to regulate and to cope instead of saying, I struggle with this. This character, yeah, they're having a tough time. What does their sadness look like? That kind of thing. I also think it's, it's the same stuff, like meeting them where they're at, engagement, allowing them to set the pacing and the tone. And I always have that conversation with parents really early. They can get anxious, like, they're just, it's a very slow pace of things that I'm anxious about them addressing, especially if it's behavioral. And I always say, they have to be willing to, set the tone and the pacing, because if I come at them with lots of questions about how they feel and all of that, they're going to shut down. So, kind of reading that pacing and conversation, and just organically kind of building interest, and allowing them to choose. Our environment is a studio, so I always start with let's look around the room. Let me show you what I've got, and I'll show you some possibilities of things we can make. So it's not just drawing and painting. Sometimes people will come in, more adults than kids, but they'll say, I can't draw, don't ask me to draw. I'm like, don't worry, you don't have to do that if that's not your thing. So we get really crafty. We use sensory materials. We do, we'll do finger knitting. We'll do, just all kinds of different materials, just making an abstract collage of different found objects. We'll do nature art. So it's really kind of finding whatever medium is interesting to them and kind of offshooting and building from that. That's really where we see it, because no one wants to go in and be asked to do something they have absolutely no interest in. And what happens is those organically built kinds of things also translate to real life. You'll start to see them. If they have a project and let's say they're building a sculpture and it keeps falling over, it's really frustrating. They're learning to problem solve. They're learning how to deal with frustration tolerance, distress tolerance. Can I handle this messy material because I want to get to the end result? People will come in with grand plans. I want to make this amazing thing, and I work with them to kind of break it down into realistic steps. If you come in day one, you're like, I want to knit a blanket. I'm like, okay, well, let's first start on a couple stitches. Let's build from that. Because people can feel like they're falling short, and you're building their confidence. If they find something they feel good about, something they're proud of, and they want to share it with you or a friend or a parent, I think that's, again, strength-based, the building blocks to get kind of there, instead of looking at deficit, which sometimes mental health, when you're doing diagnostics, can look at the problem areas, not the areas of strength where you can then build from there. So we like to shift it and make sure we're kind of thinking about that.
Yeah. I just want to add one thing that we also do. So with their interests, a lot of times we will take interest in the things that they enjoy. So if they absolutely love Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and they tell us what their favorite book is, we might read that book on our own time so that we can have a conversation with them about it. I had one kid who very, very high anxiety and was doing a summer camp, and was playing an instrument that he had never played before. And the very first day, he was very frustrated by it. It was really hard. He didn't want to go back. He was a speed cuber, so he could solve the Rubik's Cube very, very quickly. And we made an agreement. If you can, and we talked about coping skills and things like that, but if you can get through this week, and, that's your mission. We always call it missions. We don't call it homework or what they have to do at home. It's their mission. Your mission is to get through this week of camp and just try your best. Doesn't matter if you're a perfect guitar player, just try your best. And I will teach myself to solve a Rubik's Cube. And I did just that. I watched YouTube videos so that I could eventually, I certainly couldn't do it in a minute and 30 seconds like he expected me to, but I was able to do it. And so he was very excited to share with me that he got through camp and he performed in the final performance, and he really liked that instrument and wanted to continue. And he was excited that I had actually followed through on my end and learned how to solve a Rubik's Cube. So.
Well, you guys are just awesome. So I have 2 children. I have 4 children too that have needs. They're totally different needs though. My son is neurospicy and my daughter has medical and developmental needs, but she dances with Haley and my son goes to Halligan. And I now want to get my son to go next door right here and my daughter over here at the Vision. So thank you for even me, who I consider myself pretty well informed. I'm learning so much with these panels about things that could be beneficial to my children that I had no idea existed. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing it. My question is, how do we not duplicate services? For example, like my daughter is seen by an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor. We just went yesterday. I left literally thinking there's way more going on than what he's telling me. How do we get that new evaluation from a new doctor paid for by insurance without it being a duplication? That's one question I have, but, or would we just have to do private pay? And that's probably the answer. And also with behavioral health, if my son is seeing a talk therapist, let's say, would insurance then say, no, we're not covering mental health in any other way? What has been your experience with how things are covered? But I know you're private pay anyway, so that doesn't apply, right?
Well, I do accept insurance. I'm mostly insurance
So
based.
I guess just like the topic of how it's is it duplicated? Is it different categories? Things like that.
In our experience, and we accept Blue Choice Option, Child Health Plus, which are, Medicaid-based plans, and that was our fear is, if someone's seeing a talk therapist or, something, are they gonna have a denial of services with us? As long as it's not on the same day, we've found that it is possible. So you can see your licensed mental health or social work or whatever is billed under behavioral health and your mental health coverage. You could see them Monday, you see us Tuesday. So they don't deny, in our experience, multiple mental health providers, which is good news, because that's a fear, especially if art therapy is considered adjunctive. Like, how does that work? But with insurances, we haven't run into that barrier. Another thing we haven't run into, thankfully, is limit of visits. Mm-hmm. They haven't said, like, when I go to physical therapy every year, they tell me I have how many visits, right? Mm-hmm. For us, we have not seen that with any of the insurances yet, so I'm hopeful about that. So what we do as a practice is we do all the billing, we do courtesy, we will bill Aetna. We're not in network with Aetna, but we'll bill Aetna and see if there's out-of-network coverage. Things families can do is, one, if you obtain the provider's NPI, you can call your insurance company and say, I want to see this provider. You provide the NPI, and they will let you know, one, if they're out of network or in network, but they'll also tell you if you have an out of network, at what point does it kick in, and when can I utilize those benefits? So it might be, like, my daughter's a type 1 diabetic. We made our deductible about mid-year. Yeah. So we, once we made our deductible, we get out of network benefits. They kick in, they pay more. So you always want to ask certain questions, and we have kind of a list that we go through and our admins will share, but it's kind of putting it in the court of the families to advocate. Because if you just call your insurance company right now, if I called and said, hi, I want to send my kid to art therapy, they'd be like, that's not covered, because they just don't know. But the NPI is that marker that identifies us professionals for anything. So they can call and say, oh, okay, well, they're not in our system, but it looks like you do have out of network and it would cover this out of network person at a certain point, and or you would you cover it to a certain level, or it'll be like 80% later or something. So there's lots of, I mean, all the plans are different, and sometimes we're like, "Ooh, that's interesting," but we haven't run into the barrier of no, like, couldn't see you and me. It just can't be the same day. So that's how we've seen it happen. I don't know if you've had that same experience.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences. I've had some clients who, like, they would see a licensed psychologist for one specific thing. Like, I had one particular kiddo who had been going to this therapist to talk about, like, gender identity issues for a while, but they also wanted to work on some of the behavioral things, and because I'm a behavior analyst, they wanted to come to me for that. So again, they checked with their insurance company, and there was no limits, no duplication. It was more so like we're billing under different diagnoses or CPT codes. So if, let's say we have a kiddo who has multiple diagnoses, and one provider's billing under anxiety and the other one's billing under depression, they're technically treating two different things. So if I have somebody who is also seeing another provider, I just make sure that I get a release and I collaborate with that provider to make sure that we're on the same page, we're not contradicting each other. You know, I learn more about what they're working on, they learn more about what I'm working on, and that way we become just a part of their team. So I have not seen any limits in coverage as far as, again, the number of visits, and people who have multiple mental health providers. I haven't seen any issues with that either. No.
For me, so I'm more familiar with the therapy codes. So your question is more for the doctor, but
Yours would be billed as an OT.
it's a vision therapy specific code. Yep. But the ophthalmologist question, it depends on how Dr. Harvey bills his evaluation. So if it's a different evaluation, because I know sometimes there are limits, like you get one eye exam a year or something like that. But I do believe he bills it medically, so it might be under a different CPT code category, which means it still could be covered. But everybody's insurance is different. You can definitely call, and they can look it up for you.
And you can provide the CPT code as well. Like, we always bill 90837, we know it like in my blood. But you can always say this is, and that's an hour of psychotherapy, and you can always ask like that, and that's usually covered, and then you can ask specifically the NPI. So those are the two numbers you always want to provide when you call, because you're just going to be armed with more information, and they'll tell you a lot more clearly. Because when you're calling, you're just, whoever's answering the 1-800 number, and they might not know the different types of professionals. Why would they, right? So you have to kind of provide these markers that identify who we are.
Yep.
You can call, we have a billing person too, so if you call like Averly Eye Care, they can look it up on our end too and tell you what your plan says.
And as a parent,
So-
without going through this, I would never have known what those would be. So you don't know what to ask until you're informed. So that's
Yep.
always good to know.
So we're just afternoon, so almost done. I just wanted to give you guys each an opportunity to maybe talk through really quickly about how, if someone wanted to get started or had more questions with you, what the best way to do that would be, whether that's website, call, if you're out in the community every once in a while, that kind of thing, just here at the end.
Yeah, we're really easy to find. We're just at HalliganArts.com. I have two amazing administrators who can reach out to me at any time if you have questions specifically for me or any of our therapists. We have an intake specialist, and you can send a message on the website. You can call us. We have an intake phone number, so it's pretty easy to follow us on Instagram, things like that. So you can reach out on any of those avenues, and it will get to one of us.
We also have a website. It's mindfitmentalhealth.com. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram page as well, where we post a lot of the things that we're offering, and then just general, everyday coping skills tips or mental health tips. So if you go to the website, there's a phone number and an email, and you can contact either way. And we have one person is actually one of our interns who kind of goes through the intakes and returns calls and things like that.
Yeah, our website is a great resource. It's actually studio19dancecompany.net. We just had to change it so it can get confusing. And also just emailing Lori at studio19dancecompany@gmail.com. She's the queen of answering any tuition questions, any self-direction questions. And we do actually have a 5-week coming up starting at the end of February, which is just 5 consecutive Sundays. Not a huge commitment, just to kind of see if they like it. And the all needs class is about 45 minutes, just once a week, just to kind of test the waters.
Averly Eye Care in Canandaigua, New York. You can look us up online, grab the phone number. What the first step would be to call and say that you're interested in a pediatric evaluation. The staff will send you a questionnaire, and then you return that, the doctor reviews it, and then will help you, guide you to the right appointment, the type of appointment. So if he thinks that, yes, it looks like there's some things going on, then he'll see you for the evaluation. So, yeah.
So I want to thank everybody for coming today, and just a reminder that we have our next session is on February 4th. It's care coordination. And the next 2 months, February and March, both of them are on a Tuesday, even though we usually have been doing these on Wednesdays, just because of tax season. And do you want to say anything about your event one more time that's on the 15th, or are you good on January 15th? Yeah. And do any of you have events coming up or anything that you would want to promote?
We are just wrapping up our fall round of social skills groups. We also do a Dungeons and Dragons group it's a therapeutic group and works on social skills as well. We will be doing another round of those two groups specifically, probably springtime, like March, April-ish. So that'll be something to look for. And then we're always open, if we get calls where somebody's looking for a particular group and we notice that there's a need for that particular group, we will create a group based on what the need is. So we're always open to suggestions.
We have an education series coming up that came out of client concerns with our team and folks that we see. So we're actually sponsoring a self-defense course for women or trans folks in it is February 15th, and it's going to be at True Yoga down on South Avenue, and it's open to up to 20 folks, and it's low cost. Our practice is paying for a portion of the trainer, so it's going to be $45 for a 3-hour empowerment self-defense course. So that information's on our website. It's open for anyone. It's inclusive. People who have limited mobility or in a wheelchair. The trainer is amazing. She's from the Ithaca area, and she's going to be coming up to work with us. My hope is there'll be a lot of interest. We have some already, but I'd like to offer it kind of quarterly because I think it's such a need in the community. So that's the start of a series that we're going to be putting out, and you'll see it, kind of in our promotions too.
Great. And all of you can post on Parents Helping Parents Coalition in Monroe County any events that you have, because we have left our group a public group. It's not a page, and we want people to be posting on our group. We don't want it all to be coming from us because we don't know it all. And just a shout for our next webinar, it's on February 15th, Wednesday from 8 to 9. And it's going to be Bridget Hurley from the Children's Agenda talking about early intervention and preschool special ed advocacy. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.